Kamala Harris is literally the person in the United States of America who is in charge of AI policy.
Right.
And I'm quite certain the woman cannot spell AI.
Yes.
So.
Vivek, how are you, my friend?
Good, man. We're chaos in the car with kids. You know what that's like. So.
That's right. I just left my minivan from the pool. It's the same thing. I'm wearing my pool shirt.
Yeah, we got out of the pool. That's where we just came from. But regardless, this is sadly not that surprising, and I do think there's some lessons for us to keep in mind to stay successful right now. So, yeah, that's what.
So please, I just want to set up here. You are the most right man in America right now. You are the most correct man in the country.
I wish it weren't so. I mean, I said this in the Republican debate stage a year ago. The media, that was the NBC debate, they roasted me. They called me a conspiracy theorist. And as you know, Ben, even on a darker note, I have worried for a long time. I said this in the campaign trail in Iowa. You were right there with me. It was uncomfortable, even for a lot of Republicans, when I worried they weren't going to let Donald Trump get to that nomination last week. But I think divine providence guided him there nonetheless. And we're in a strong position now. I think the reality is we got to avoid making the mistake of thinking that we're up against a candidate here. We're not. We're up against a machine. And the more we see it that way, the more we understand what's actually going on. I actually just had a good conversation with President Trump. I think his head's in the right place. I think the right answer is it doesn't matter who they put up, right? We stand for our own vision of who we are and what we stand for, irrespective of the machine we're up against. Maybe it's Kamala. Maybe it's not. I personally, you're not going to hear me come out instantly just attacking Kamala. I've been plenty critical of her. I just don't think that's the right strategy for us. I think it looks unnecessarily insecure to say that, oh, now that it's not Biden, it's Kamala. It's a machine anyway. And regardless of the machine's activity, we have our own vision. And President Trump, and I think the convention overall, did an outstanding job of laying that out for the country. So we're coming off of, I think, a position where we're insulated from this a little bit. Complacency isn't an option. I did see a lot of people last week celebrating like this thing is over. In some ways, this thing hasn't even begun. But we're in our strongest position if we don't just fret and say, oh, my God, it's not Biden. Now let's train the fire on Kamala. It's almost you don't need to, right? This woman, I've never run for president before. I made it to the Iowa caucus. I got 8%. She was, a U.S. senator with a pedigree track headed there. She didn't even make it to the Iowa caucus of her own party's primary nomination process. So people don't inherently like her. I would say forget training the criticism on Kamala Harris or anything else. Forget that. I think that's it's a knee-jerk temptation. It's the wrong way to go. Focus more on the ideals of our founding and why Donald Trump is going to be the person who's going to do that. He picked a great vice president last week, a good friend of mine. I think we're in a strong position to focus on our own vision, and that's what I'd encourage us to do.
So you have been calling this for a very long time, yet even I, when we were on a stage together, surrounded by a couple thousand people 2 days ago, and you were giving a live interview, and I said, Vivek, Joe seems pretty stubborn in all this. And you said with confidence, Eric Trump right next to you, kind of laughing in your face. Eric Trump laughing in your face. You said, no, man, no, it's still not going to be Joe. Now, the reason that I pushed a little bit on you there is because Joe is just such a stubborn old mule, right? And he's Irish, and anybody who knows the Irish know guys like Joe, and he's obviously not mentally competent. And maybe he could have just said, I'm not moving. What do you believe happened between like this decision and Joe Biden saying on George Stephanopoulos Live, not even God himself will get me out of this race? He said it, Vivek. So what happened?
Two things. Sometimes, money is a more powerful motivator than God. People can say that. And it's not just money in the literal sense of it. But I've said this for weeks. I do think what they've probably been doing behind closed doors, and I'm not in the business of speculating on facts. I'm just in the business of tracking incentives, right? We know the Biden family is responsive to incentives of what leaves their family best off. I mean, this country has suffered as a consequence. We've talked about that in other contexts. So they've been negotiating the exit package. So I feel like they must have reached terms on what the exit package looks like. Not just financial, but just the sense of cultural currency that they're going to make sure he has. The thing about Barack Obama is if he leaves the White House, say what you will about him, he writes a book, people want to read the book, right? Or he goes on to Netflix for a deal, they'll want to hear what he has to say. The problem with the Biden family is they've felt very insecure that when he leaves the White House, they're done, right? That whole family, nobody cares about reading a book that he writes, even a word that he puts on a piece of paper, let alone broader thoughts that he might have in the future. So I think one of the things they had to do is offer them that golden parachute. And so I'm sure that those terms were, in these last few weeks, what I believe we've been seeing in his reluctance is really just part of a public negotiation. The other thing I would say, though, Benny, is it comes back to this is, okay, what if Biden would refuse to leave? It again indulges this myth that it really is down to human agency at all. It's not. These aren't individuals. The other side we're up against, it's a collective, it's a machine. The idea that there are individuals with their own agency making these decisions isn't an illusion, right? I mean, that's just an illusion. It's an easy trap to fall into because you see individuals who will look you on the screen and, on the TV screen or look you in the eye, and it feels like you're talking to a real person. So, I don't fault people for falling for that illusion. But once you see it, you can't unsee it. Those are really just illusions, projections of agency, of human agency, when in fact it's this managerial machine that's designed to crush the will of the citizens. Not crush conservatives even, to crush the will of citizens, right? And that's what this rise of the managerial class and the managerial machine is all about. And so once you see that, we start to realize how irrelevant it is what Joe Biden says on a given day. The machine will take care of any one of its cogs, right? That's the exit package I'm talking about. That's the golden parachute. But once you understand the macro picture is, it's an artifice, it's an illusion to think of that these people, such person says they don't want to run, such person says they won't leave the race. It doesn't matter. It's what the machine actually ultimately determines the outcome is going to be. And, the more we see it that way, the more we recognize that's truth. There's a lot of these things that people say you've been right about a lot of these predictions. It's actually not, I'm wrong about a lot of things too, but it's not that hard to be contrarian and to be right if you understand the incentives, the amalgam of incentives that roll up into that machine. That's actually what we got to understand we're up against. And we're not running against a person, we're running against that machine. And
you believe that?
I believe we're up against a managerial machine. And I think that if we own that message, right, as opposed to we're against Kamala or against someone else, I think that's going to bring a lot of independence along. Because I think a lot of people, even a lot of Democrats who've been deceived, who are orphaned, I think can come along and still deliver the landslide that I think we are hopefully on track to realize this year. And you know what? I think this could all end up being very positive for the country in the end. The same people that lied about the Hunter Biden laptop, lied about the Russia collusion hoax, lied about COVID origin. Now they lied to you about the fitness of the current commander-in-chief. The idea that we actually have a functioning, thinking person leading this country is an illusion. It may go down as the biggest of those lies, actually, in U.S. history. So that creates, I think, nobody likes to be lied to, even if they agree with your political views. If you look them in the eye and you lie to them, even if they agree with you on 90% of the issues, it is more important that at least it's somebody who respects you enough to at least tell you something close to approximating the truth. And so I just think that if we approach this the right way, they might have lost a good portion of their voter base. And it's up to us to say that, you know what, you may not agree with us on 100% of things, but we're the movement that's going to tell you the truth and stand for you as citizens. And that's what I'm calling for.
You make such a remarkable point that you got nearly 10% in Iowa, having never held political office, and not a single Democrat delegate has voted for Kamala Harris. Not in 2020. She didn't get a single vote. We checked. She didn't get a single vote, and not this time. And now they're going to shove Kamala Harris down everybody's throats. Quite the reversal. And it's going to be, that's the least Democratic thing I've ever heard.
Yeah, for the Democratic Party, of course. Protect our democracy. Yeah. Anyway, I should. I wanted to say hello because I think you're also, have a knack for understanding incentives and playing things forward. And I've enjoyed our conversations about this over the last year. But the reality is, and you've also been, ahead of the curve on this. My only advice to people is follow the incentives, and usually, not always, but usually, it'll lead you to the right place of where things are going. And let's continue to do that now, rolling this forward. So. We'll talk soon.
Really quickly, you said you spoke to President Trump. Can you just give us whatever insight appropriate?
He's confident, man. There's a reason he's the leader of our time. I thought Tucker actually captured this reasonably well at his RNC speech, and I've been sort of circling around a similar theme. He's really the leader of the country right now, right? If you look, people on the global stage, even Zelensky was apparently calling President Trump, right, based on President Trump's posts. it's one thing to say that you have a nominal president when that president is itself somebody who the Democratic Party says even can't be competent enough to be a candidate. The idea that that person is really running and the leader of the country is an illusion. Donald Trump's the leader of the country right now, and that's the answer. And he's not yet the president. He's been the president. He's not yet the president again. But functionally, he is effectively occupying the seat that most Americans, when they look in their heart to say, who's the leader of my nation? Right? I think that's something that most citizens need. It's the idea, just like a child in a household generally needs. Okay, here's my mother figure and my father figure. In a household, as you need that in your heart. As a citizen, you need in your heart the idea that who's the leader of my country? And I don't think that the person who people think of right now and the leader of their country in their heart that fills that vacuum is, oh, it's Joe Biden. It's Donald Trump right now. And I think that he has.
Ladies and gentlemen, we have a connection drop with Vivek, our dear friend.
Hey, you got me, Benny?
We got you back. Yeah. We got you back.
I'll just say this in closing. I should go. What I was going to say is Donald Trump, I think, is operating even on a different level than even he's been on. If you rewind to when he first took the presidency in 2016, he was a great president in that first term, but I think he's on a different level, not only than other peers who might run for U.S. president in the Democratic Party. He's even on a different level than even a past version of himself, I believe. And I think he sees greatness ahead. And I think that he is elevating himself to rise to that occasion. And so I just love the space he's in. And you ask people in this country in your heart, who's that leader of the United States of America in your heart, right? Not the person who's technically the U.S. president, but the person who's the leader of this country right now. It's unambiguous who that is.
Wow. You still think it's going to be Michelle Obama? Last question.
I think there's two choices. I mean, while we're at it, right? I might be wrong on this. I think I said more recently, it's got to be two people. It's either Kamala or Michelle, because either one checks their identity politics issue. If it's Kamala, I think their VP is likely to be Josh Shapiro. Just take that file out of the way. I might be wrong, but just play out the incentives again, right? Pennsylvania, think about the Jewish vote. Think about somebody who's articulate to complement. Kamala Harris is such obvious identity politics pick that the visual of that, I think, could work. And if it's not that, and they go to the drawing board altogether, it's got to be somebody who rises above the infighting that it otherwise would create on their side of this while checking the identity politics boxes. So I continue to think those are the two options that remain.
All right. We'll see, ladies and gentlemen. Vivek Ramaswamy, the most correct man in America right now, doing a victory dance. Godspeed, sir.
Thank you, man. Good seeing you.